Here's another example of dividing two complex numbers. So let's say we have something like 3i divided by 2 minus 4i. Now we're going to proceed just like we always do when we divide complex numbers. We're going to multiply the top and the bottom by the conjugate of the bottom. So the bottom is 2 minus 4i, which means the conjugate of the bottom is 2 plus 4i. Okay. Now notice 2 and 4, they have a common factor of 2, and we could pull out the 2 from the bottom and keep a 1/2 out here, but let's not, for no real particular reason. Okay, so what we're going to have then is on the top we get 3i times the quantity, 2 plus 4i, and on the bottom what do we have? The quantity 2 minus 4i multiplied by the quantity 2 plus 4i. Okay. Now on the top we're going to distribute the 3i, so when we do that we get 3i times 2, which is just 6i, and then we have plus this 4i times this 3i then. So 4 times 3 gives us 12, and then I times I gives us I squared, and we'll come back to that later. Now what happens on the bottom? So notice again we have that special form a plus bi times a minus bi. Yeah, this one's the minus, this one's the plus, but since we're multiplying, remember it doesn't matter what order we write them in, so a minus bi times a plus bi doesn't really matter. But remember when we simplify this, we get a squared plus b squared, and we've talked about this shortcut a few times now, so we're just going to use that without any further explanation. So in our case, a is 2 and b is 4, or you could say b is negative 4. It's not going to matter because we are squaring. Okay, 4 squared is 16, negative 4 squared is also 16. So in our case we're going to end up with 2 squared plus 4 squared. 2 squared is 4, 4 squared is 16, 4 plus 16 is 20. So when we simplify the bottom here, we get 20. Okay, that's great. Now what happens? So on the top we still have the 6i, and now we have this 12i squared to simplify. So 12 times I squared, what is I squared? Remember this whole thing with complex numbers, I squared is negative 1. So when we say 12i squared, what we're really saying is 12 times negative 1, which means negative 12. So plus 12i squared becomes minus 12. Okay, and then we're still dividing everything by 20. Okay, let's go ahead and get rid of all this over here so we have some more room to work with. Alright, now we're going to come up here. Now what we want to do is split this up into two fractions so it's a little easier to simplify. So this is going to be 6i over 20, and then minus, we have a minus sign in the middle, minus 12 over 20. Okay. Now 6 and 20, there's a common factor of 2 we can pull out, and what we end up with is 3i over 10. Okay. 6 over 20 simplifies to 3 over 10, and we still have that I floating around up there. And then what happens over here? Now here, there's actually a common factor of 4 we can pull out. So 12 over 20, if we pull out our common factor of 4, we're going to get 3 over 5. Okay? Now, we do want to be careful because if you're following along in a course, you might have to put your answer in standard form, and this is not quite standard form. So standard form is going to be the real part plus or minus the imaginary part times I, and we don't exactly have that. So some instructors might not quite be that picky, but there's nothing really wrong with that. So let's go ahead and put this in standard form. So this would be negative 3/5, and then plus, okay, this is the positive 3 over 10 times I. Then we have plus 3/10 times I. So just to be careful and thorough, we want to put that exactly in standard form, real part plus the imaginary part times I. Okay, so if we do 3i divided by the quantity 2 minus 4i, then our result is going to be negative 3/5 plus 3/10 times I. And that's another example of dividing by complex numbers.